very warm good morning to all of you. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning and we're back once again with a fresh edition of Breakfast News on DD India. I'm Preeti, with me is Rukma. In the next 1 hour, we'll get to everything that's been making it to the headlines. We'll get to national headlines, international updates. We'll get to updates from the world of sports, business, a health tip. Also, we'll get to web review. Indeed, we have the next 1 hour packed for you to make sure that your tea or coffee right in the morning tastes even better.
And a very good morning to you, Preeti, and to all our viewers as well. Over the next 1 hour, as Preeti said, we'll be bringing you all the top stories. It's an action-packed news hour ahead of us. Well, also as just to give you a brief glimpse, all the latest updates from Uttarakhand after that glacier disaster there. A bit of good news on that front, also all the COVID updates and much more. But first, here are the headlines.
BJP issues whip for Lok Sabha members to be present in the House when it resumes at 4 p.m. today. No question hour in Lok Sabha. Government to reply on President's address.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate World Sustainable Development Summit 2021 this evening virtually. Theme of the summit is redefining our common future, safe and secure environment for all. Union Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Prakash Javadekar, to be present on the occasion. Besides President of Guyana, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, amongst others.
Rescue and relief work at fast pace in Uttarakhand after glacier tragedy. Armed forces, NDRF, SDRF, ITBP and other agencies intensify efforts to locate and rescue 174 missing persons. 25 to 35 estimated to be still stuck inside the tunnel. At least 32 people perished so far.
India and Afghanistan ink pact to build Shatut Dam in Kabul Basin that will provide clean drinking water to 2 million people. Prime Minister Modi says India and Afghanistan want to see the region free from extremism and terrorism. President Ghani thanks India, hailing it as a true friend of Afghanistan.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and US Secretary of State review Indo-Pacific developments and Quad cooperation, exchange views on the situation in Myanmar.
Origin of COVID-19 pandemic remains a mystery. WHO scientists say theory that COVID-19 virus leaked from a Wuhan lab is extremely unlikely. Announced that the mission to uncover origins of the virus in China failed to identify animal source.
Over 6.5 million people vaccinated against COVID so far in India. Second phase of vaccination to kick off on 13 February. No deaths reported in the last 24 hours in 15 states and union territories, including Delhi.
United Nations expresses strong concerns over reports of use of force by security forces against demonstrators in Myanmar. Protests continue. New Zealand PM Jacinda Ardern announces suspension of all high-level political and military contact with Myanmar.
And England crushed India by 227 runs in the Chennai Test, taking 1-0 lead in the format series, chasing an improbable victory target of 420 runs to win. The hosts were bundled out for a paltry 192 in the second innings.
And now let's take a look at the news in detail. Both houses of parliament witnessed heavy business yesterday. The Rajya Sabha witnessed enhanced legislative business along with question hour and zero hour. After discussion, a bill was also passed in the upper house. The Major Ports Authorities Bill 2020 is scheduled to be tabled in the Rajya Sabha today, while in the Lok Sabha proceedings were extended till 1 a.m. late into the night. Discussions on the motion of thanks to the President's address were completed. The government will be replying to discussions on motion of thanks in the Lok Sabha today. The question now will remain postponed in the lower house. Today's proceedings of both houses of parliament include commencement of discussion on the budget. Meanwhile, the BJP has issued a whip for Lok Sabha members to be present in the house when it resumes at 4 p.m. today.
To get us more on that, our correspondent Vishal Barristo is joining us. Vishal, good morning to you. Very quickly, put forth for us the details of the legislative business that is to be taken up today. We tell our viewers that a whip has been issued for the members to be present of BJP in Lok Sabha. The government is to reply on President's address. Let us know more.
Well, a very good morning to you, Preeti and Rukma. Yes, indeed, it was quite a hectic day yesterday in both houses of the parliament, and the lower house was extended to 1 a.m. till today in the night, and it was all done because the government, Prime Minister, is expected to reply on the vote of thanks, on the motion of thanks, rather. So the BJP has issued a whip to all its members to be present in the house, and it would be interesting to note how Prime Minister reacts to all the allegations, because he was at his best in the upper house, replying to each and every query, each and every attack by the opposition. And today also we are expecting the same Prime Minister at his best. And it would be very interesting to note his observation, because last time when he had said that you must have heard of Shram GV, Buddhi GV, but there are Andolan GV, the opposition did not take it very lightly, and they were all attacking the Prime Minister, calling the agitators as parasites. So let's see what happens today, because today the Prime Minister would be answering to each and every question. Last time in the upper house, he had said that the MSCP was there, is there, and will be there, assuring farmers that the government has all ears for them and they are ready to talk, to go to any extent. He also said that no, nothing is perfect. We are all there to make any correction, to make any improvement. We are here to listen to you. My government is there for the doubling of income of the farmers. So the farmer issue would definitely find its way in the Prime Minister's speech today. Preeti?
Also, Vishal, well, question hour has been suspended today in view of the government's expected reply to the motion of thanks address and the debate on the motion of thanks. Also, it's very interesting, Vishal, about how the proceedings are going beyond. Yesterday, for example, they went on till 1 a.m. late in the night. There's clearly a message here that our parliamentarians want to give out to the people.
Well, exactly, and it is not for the first time. Remember, day before the House was extended 3 hours, ended at 12 a.m. in the night, in the midnight rather. So it's been 2 days on the trot, and both the opposition and the Treasury benches have agreed that they would continue with the proceedings of the House, and both have agreed to discuss on the issue of farmers. Earlier, the Rajya Sabha completed its quota of 15 hours on the farmers issue, and now the Lok Sabha had a hectic discussion. They finished their motion of thanks on the President's speech, and today the Prime Minister is expected to reply on the motion of thanks. So it is going to be quite an interesting day, especially in the lower house of the Parliament.
All right, thank you so much, Vishal, for joining us with those inputs. That was our correspondent, Vishal Barristo, spelling out more details as to what is to be expected in Parliament today. The government is to give the reply to the President's address today in Lok Sabha at 4 p.m. We'll keep you updated. Let's turn focus now to updates coming in from Uttarakhand, where disaster struck on Sunday. Search and rescue efforts are still on at war footing to locate and save the lives of nearly 174 people still missing after Sunday's glacier tragedy in Chamoli district. 25 to 35 workers are feared to be trapped inside a tunnel at Tapovan, where a multi-agency operation remains on. The death toll has risen to 32. 7 bodies have been identified, while 25 bodies are still unidentified. Meanwhile, emergency workers are racing against time to dig through mud and rocks. The semi-liquid debris is estimated to be around 180 meters deep. Over 100 meters of the tunnel entrance stretch has been cleared so far. BRO teams are working on a war footing. More than 300 meters of the road has been completely cleared. Also, the work of constructing a bridge over the river is being done at a rapid pace. SDRF teams are also involved in relief and rescue operations. A ropeway is being prepared by SDRF to facilitate the movement of people. According to the Electricity Department, power supply was affected in 13 villages, out of which supply of electricity has been ensured in 11 villages. Electricity lines are being laid for the remaining 2 villages. Water supply has also been restored in 8 villages.
And our correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya joining us now with all the latest updates on that. Tapas, we are hearing that rescue operations, even as they are on in full swing, there's still a long way to go. Give us the latest update on the situation in that tunnel there.
Absolutely, and hope is at the other end of the tunnel as the rescue workers, it's keeping the rescue workers going as almost they're expecting that close to 174 people who are still missing, especially of the NTPC, are at the other end. And yesterday, 6 more bodies were found, taking the total count of fatalities for the tragedy to almost 32. And the workers are the rescue workers are facing the issue from the water and the sludge that is coming out. So they try to make a headway for that for the tunnel, where it is almost a 1.6 kilometer tunnel, but they only could make a headway to almost 120 meter. And that's what is the worry factor for the rescue workers. In fact, they are worried that hypothermia, another condition of extreme cold getting into the body, may play a big role. So they're hopeful that they will be able to get inside the tunnel in a fastest possible time. And they're hoping that oxygen levels remains the same, because there is apparently a overhead of the particular tunnel where the oxygen can come, and certain equipments are also inside the tunnel. So they're hoping that the rescue workers who are trapped inside will be able to make do with those, and they can survive for that particular time till the rescue workers don't reach there. But it's an uphill task that they are facing against nature's fury, against the water and the sludge that is coming out. A couple of days, the next couple of days will be of crucial importance for these rescue workers and for the people who are trapped inside. So it's the hope that is keeping these rescue workers going to rescue those people trapped inside.
All right, Tapas, you're talking of hope, and you're talking of the the Herculean task which is up the sleeves of the rescue agencies. How has the establishment there assessed the severity of this disaster? Because comparisons had been made earlier with regard to the tragedy, the flash floods which struck the state in 2013. So has there been any evaluation done, or has there been any evaluation, or for that matter, any evaluation again being done to assess the severity of the damage that has been meted out?
Yes, absolutely. So initially, the scientists and the geologists have already started taking understanding why this particular situation happened, and one of the reasons they believe that there is a peak that was that actually broke off from the glacier, and it hit, and that actually led to the avalanche and the whole situation therefore. But it's still early days, because remember there are major studies that needs to be taken in the region. In fact, the scientists along with the administration are already started with the efforts. Right now the thing that matters, and that is actually the administration is putting all their efforts and energy in, is to rescue the people who are trapped inside, not just in the tunnel, but also in the downstream areas also, and creating once again the infrastructure. Remember the avalanche, the glacier melt has actually destroyed a lot of properties and infrastructure along the way. So the major concern for the administration is to once again recreate the whole thing, provide electricity, it's a chilly night. It is still in outside Tapovan, it's almost 6 to 7 degree, and inside the Tapovan, it is expected the temperature to even drop by another couple of degrees. So
and we're actually talking here, Tapas, about people trapped inside the debris
yes.
for hours on end, for days on end. Meanwhile,
yes.
full credit there, Tapas, from what you described to us, the work that the rescue teams are doing there, and our hearts go out to them, our best wishes to them, and we just hope that those operations will end soon, and all the people who are trapped will be recovered. Thank you so much for joining us there with those details.
That was our correspondent Tapas telling us about the rescue and relief operations in the tragedy-struck Uttarakhand, where the state is trying hard to get back to normalcy. We'll keep you updated. Let's get you other news in the bulletin now.
Well, just 2 days after India became the first country to gift COVID vaccines to Afghanistan, the two countries further fortified their friendship on Tuesday. A remote bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Ashraf Ghani led to the signing of an agreement where India will build the Shatut Dam in the Kabul River Basin. This will provide clean drinking water to 2 million people in the Afghan capital, apart from generating electricity and irrigating fields. Here's more.
India-Afghanistan ties strengthened by summit-level talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani via video conferencing on Tuesday. Both the countries signed the agreement on Shatut Dam, which would provide clean drinking water to 20 lakh citizens of Kabul and will also be used for irrigation. While interacting with President Ghani, PM Modi assured the Afghanistan president that no outside force will be able to stop the country's development and friendship with India, and assured that New Delhi is and will continue to remain a partner in Afghanistan's development process.
हमारे लिए अफगानिस्तान की आवश्यकताएं हमेशा महत्वपूर्ण रही है और रहेगी। इसलिए मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि आज हम काबुल में जिस सहतूत बांध के निर्माण पर समझौता कर रहे हैं, उसकी नींव सिर्फ ईंटों और मोर्टार पर नहीं बनेगी, बल्कि भारत अफगान दोस्ती की ताकत पर टिकी होगी।
Referring to the decades-long violence in Afghanistan, PM Modi said India is concerned over the increasing bloodshed and India supports a comprehensive ceasefire in the country. Slamming terror and extremist groups, PM Modi asserted that as close neighbors and strong strategic partners, India and Afghanistan want to see the region free from extremism and terrorism.
भारत एक ऐसी शांति प्रक्रिया का समर्थन करता रहा है जो अफगानिस्तान के नेतृत्व में हो, अफगानिस्तान के स्वामित्व में हो और अफगानिस्तान के नियंत्रण में हो।
Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani thanked India for building infrastructure projects and said India's development assistance is iconically marked on Afghanistan's landscape. President Ghani termed India as a true partner in Afghanistan's development.
Our submission with you is that terrorism must be seen as a full ecosystem, not a series of isolated individuals or groups.
On 7th of February, India's gift of 500,000 doses of COVID vaccines reached Kabul. India is the first responder to deliver vaccines to the country. The vaccines have been developed by Serum Institute of India, Pune, and arrived in Kabul on an Air India flight. Amid the pandemic, India sent 75,000 tons of wheat to Afghanistan and was also able to send more than 20 tons of life-saving medicines and other equipment to address the COVID-19 challenge. India's development portfolio in Afghanistan amounts to over $3 billion. India has remained a true partner in Afghanistan's development and progress. The enduring friendship grows from strength to strength. Arun Sharma's report for DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will today inaugurate the World Sustainable Development Summit 2021 via video conferencing. The theme of the summit is Redefining Our Common Future, Safe and Secure Environment for All. The 20th edition of the Energy and Resources Institute's flagship event, the World Sustainable Development Summit, will be held online from 10 to 12 February. The summit will bring together a wide number of governments, business leaders, academicians, climate scientists, youth and the civil society in the fight against climate change. India's Ministry of Environment Forests and Climate Change, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Earth Sciences are key partners in the summit. Energy and industry transition, adaptation and resilience, nature-based solutions, climate finance, circular economy, clean oceans and air pollution are amongst the range of topics to be discussed during the summit.
And Arun, our correspondent, joining us for more on this. Well, another summit, a world-level summit having repercussions and ramifications for the strategy to be planned ahead for a kind of report card of all the months and the contributions to be held online. Again, take us through its significance. The Prime Minister will be addressing the summit today.
Good morning, Rukma and Preeti. Well, indeed, it's a significant day as far as environmental aspect is concerned. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to inaugurate this summit, primarily the World Sustainable Development Summit, that is from 10th of February till 12th of February. Now, we know this fact that the important theme of this summit is that redefining our common future, safe and secure environment. So we know this fact that in post-COVID world, and as far as this entire new decade is concerned, that is from 2021 till 2030, what are important priorities as far as as far as climate change is concerned, as far as environment is concerned? And Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision is going to be very much significant. We know this fact that various business leaders, various global leaders are going to participate, academicians, the youth, the youngsters primarily, and the environmental scientists are also going to participate. Well, the president of Guyana, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, the Deputy Secretary General of United Nations is also going to participate in this important event. And the kind of initiative that India has taken and what is the roadmap ahead in next one decade, that is going to be very much significant, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to highlight and very much likely to highlight all this aspect as far as India's aspect of environment and economy going on hand in hand. We know this fact that as far as this recent union budget is concerned, the government has also announced this new hydrogen mission that will play a key role as far as combating the climate change aspect. Second important aspect is that in last 6.5 years, India has taken several initiatives that are inclusive in nature and that ensures that climate change can be controlled, be it the LED bulbs under the Ujala schemes that ensures that 38 million tons of carbon emissions can be stopped, as India is targeting that by 2030 the carbon emissions of India primarily can be cut down by up to 35%. That's what India is targeting as of now, and India has taken various initiatives like that. And of course, as far as the Ujjwala Yojana is concerned, whereby the gas connections are given to the 8 crore households in our country, that also ensures that a smoke-free environment in every household. So in this context, this summit is going to be very much important as to how can a transition be done from the fossil fuel-based economy to completely green economy in nature. So that is what the complete idea of the Sustainable Development Summit, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to inaugurate today. Well, the focus will also be on the aspect that as how to big corporate houses, the big business leaders, or primarily the business industry or the industries primarily in our country can be incentivized so that they can develop more cost-efficient products and solutions that are, environment friendly nature. So the academicians, the scientists, the business leaders, the world leaders primarily will be discussing on all these aspects, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to inaugurate today.
All right, Tarun, also the government has time and again talked of its resolve of switching over to cleaner and better sources of energy. Added to that, the country's resolve to achieve the target of renewable energy, usage of renewable energy. This on one hand, and on the other hand, the 20th edition of the summit will be taking place. How far has this summit come forth in in bringing the countries together, in realizing the dreams, the ambitions of cutting down climate change, or attacking or hitting the menace of climate change?
Absolutely, Preeti. So we know this fact that as far as climate change is concerned, there needs to be a shared efforts. There needs to be common future in that aspect. The theme speaks for itself. We know this fact that how India has taken an initiative or leadership role as far as International Solar Alliance is concerned, where there are 90 countries that are signatory members as far as International Solar Alliance is concerned. India is targeting that there should be 450 gigawatts of renewable sources of energy by 2030. And this target is to be achieved as far as 175 gigawatts of renewable sources of energy is concerned. This target will be achieved by 2022. So as far as, and also Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken about the fact that one sun, one world, and of course, one grid. So the idea is that how can there be a common future? How can there be shared efforts as far as climate change is concerned? We also know this fact that as far as India is concerned, we are going to, cut down on our carbon emissions or carbon footprint by 35% by 2030. As far as the electric vehicle segments in our countries is concerned, so what government is targeting that by 2030, that means by the end of this decade, there has to be more than 20 to 25% of electric vehicles in our country. So there is a gradual changeover, a transition primarily from the fossil fuel-based economy to a green economy primarily. And for that, what is the role of the government? How can government incentivize the corporate or the big, the industries so that they can make cost-efficient and economic solutions as far as their environment-friendly nature? That's number one. Number two, how can a desire for having a green economy in the public or the people can be created? Because it is finally a public participation. It is finally a public movement, because we have seen that earlier the initiatives like the Clean India or Swachh Bharat mission and various other missions are being fulfilled only because of public participation. So how can this drive of achieving a green economy, whereby economy and environment are going together or hand in hand, that can be ensured, and this can only be ensured with government's initiative or by incentivizing the big corporate houses, and of course by making it a public movement.
All right, thank you so much, Arun, for joining us with those inputs. We'll come back to you again during the day when the summit actually begins. That was our correspondent Anuj Sharma spelling out more details of the World Sustainable Summit, which is to take place today, and we'll keep you updated. The Prime Minister will be addressing the inaugural session.
Time now to take a look at news from across the globe.
And to begin with, we'll get you details of the interaction between External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who spoke to his US counterpart, Secretary Blinken, for the second time since Biden administration took charge. Dr. Jaishankar in a tweet said, and I quote him, "Welcome to the comprehensive discussion with Secretary Blinken, reviewed Indo-Pacific developments and the Quad cooperation, exchanged views on the situation in Myanmar." The State Department spokesperson Ned Price in a media briefing said that the US-India Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership is both broad and multifaceted. He added that for the US, India is one of the most important partners in the Indo-Pacific region, and it welcomes India's emergence as a leading global power and its role as a net security provider in the region.
US-India Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership is both broad as well as multifaceted. We'll continue to engage at the highest levels of our government to deepen cooperation on many fronts, and we are confident that the strong and upward trajectory of our partnership will in fact continue. India is one of the most important partners in the Indo-Pacific region to us. We welcome India's emergence as a leading global power and its role as a net security provider in the region. We cooperate on a wide range of diplomatic and security issues, including defense, non-proliferation, regional cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, counterterrorism, peacekeeping, the environment, health, education, technology, agriculture, space, and oceans. And of course, that list is not exhaustive.
And to get us more on that, our correspondent Abhishek Jha is joining us. Abhishek, yesterday we saw Prime Minister interact with US President Joe Biden for the first time after the latter assumed office. And also today we see External Affairs Minister speak to Secretary of State Blinken. I would want you to put into perspective for us the way both the countries have talked of optimism, have talked of positivity and strengthening this strategic relationship further. You know, what are the avenues, what is the scope ahead of taking the relationship forward?
Good morning, Preeti. Looking forward, we can see that the trust and relationship, both in terms of economy and strategic relations, that India and US has built over the years. The momentum has to continue. Both sides, US and India, understand this very well. And no matter it has been a leadership change, and a lot of political aspect of US politics and US so diplomatic ventures, they are also going to have some review, as the new administration has vocally said. But the core of the relationship with India will remain the same. The concern of US in this region will remain the same, and India as a net security provider and an ally who US can trust in maritime security, in strategic cooperation, in defense cooperation, in trade dependence is something that US cannot ignore. So with the talking that we have seen recently with the US President and Prime Minister Modi, and the recent talks of the foreign ministers of both the country, they are in this direction that the trajectory of US-India relationship should continue no matter the change of governance in any country. Also, we'll have to look this whole conversation in the very much context of this Indo-Pacific. This is a term which both the country have talked much about in the recent times. The experts in this region also emphasis more on this, because this is a segment in this region where India as a country who can not only compete to the scale of China. Only India can compete to the scale of China. Other countries are very small, and they have not been able to compete or compare Chinese scale of intrusion and other threat perception that China has created in this region. So India is one of the nation who has actually challenged China's policies, and for this, India also needs to have friends across the globe who would support India's attempt on not only securing its own security interests, but ensuring its sovereignty and territorial integrity. US has also said that it totally understands in context of India-China tensions that recently we have seen in the at our northern borders, that it totally understands that the dialogues are the only forward-looking mechanism, and it believes that the direct talk which India and China has been engaged in the past would yield in some positive results also. So while talking, the two leaders, our foreign minister and US foreign minister, they have focused on these issues, and it looks like the relationship that has been built over the last 4 or 5 years, that the direction that will continue.
Right.
Right. Abhishek, Washington is talking about a strong and upward trajectory in the relationship between the two countries. Clearly, the Biden administration looking more and more at India's increasing clout, India's increasing leadership in the region, especially in the backdrop of the Chinese aggression. In this context, how would Quad be looked at? That was also part of the discussions. Quad cooperation.
Sure, Rukma. See, Prime Minister in 2018's Shangri-La statement that Prime Minister had given, he has clearly outlined India's vision for Indo-Pacific, that India is the role of India in Indo-Pacific is to pursue its own vision and its own interest. India is not being there just to play a role or play proxy of some other countries or some bigger countries. So India has its own interests, security interests, its trade interests, and India has also been able to scale up its assistance and cooperation among countries in this region. We have seen recently, if the flood comes to Mozambique, if the flood comes to Madagascar, Comoros, the kind of assistance that India has provided in Indian Ocean region to countries as far as Mauritius and Seychelles, all sort of help has been provided, humanitarian assistance has been provided. This also tells the kind of capacity that India has built over the years and the kind of trust India wants to create among the Indian Ocean region countries. And this is why India has also become as a net security provider in this region. And India's concern is that there should not be confrontation, and this area, the Indo-Pacific region, should not become a theater of confrontation, rather than it should be a center of shared
India's,
prosperity.
right,
and this is
Abhishek.
the vision that India wants to continue with,
Right.
that, of course.
And clearly India's message of cooperation, India's message of peace and curbing terrorism, curbing extremism has gone out very well to the world community and has struck a chord in what the United States is also saying right now. Thank you very much, Abhishek, for joining us there.
All right, that was our correspondent Abhishek. Up next, we'll get you the national headlines. More on the national headlines. Let's talk of the preparations ahead for the 3 poll-bound states down south.
So it's election season coming round the corner. The Chief Election Commissioner of India, Sunil Arora, and Election Commissioner Sushil Chandra and Rajiv Kumar will be on a 2-day visit to 3 poll-bound South Indian states, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry and Kerala, starting from today. The Election Commission's team will arrive in Chennai today to review poll preparedness in Tamil Nadu. The team will meet representatives of political parties in Chennai. The visiting team of the Election Commission is also scheduled to hold a meeting with State Chief Electoral Officer and nodal police officers, and then with district electoral officers and district superintendents of police in the state. The team will round off its visit with a press conference before leaving for Puducherry in the afternoon.
Up next, we get to a quick update on the COVID-19 situation from across the country. India's daily new cases continue to manifest a downward trend. Low number of daily cases and rising recoveries have ensured a sustained fall in the active cases. As per the latest update, India's total active caseload has also dropped to 1.43 lakh. Active caseload now consists of just 1.32% of India's total positive cases. Over 1.05 crore people have recovered so far. The difference between the recovered patients and the active cases continues to progressively grow. With consistent rise in cumulative recoveries, India's recovery rate has reached 97.25%, and that is one of the highest globally. Also, India's case fatality rate of 1.43% is amongst the lowest in the world. The global average is 2.18%.
The Union Health Ministry has said that over 65,20,000 beneficiaries have received COVID-19 vaccines so far since the launch of the vaccination drive on the 16th of January this year. Addressing the media in New Delhi, Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan said that these beneficiaries include healthcare workers and frontline workers who were administered the first dose of COVID vaccines. He also informed administering a second dose to the beneficiaries will start from the 13th of February. He said India is the fastest country to reach 6 million vaccinations in just 24 days, while the United States took 26 days and the UK took 46 to reach this level. 12 states and union territories have vaccinated more than 65% of registered healthcare workers.
All right, after those national headlines, we turn focus to international updates in our segment Across the Globe. United Nations in Myanmar has expressed strong concern at the reports of use of force on Tuesday by security forces against the demonstrators. Citing reports from the capital city, Naypyidaw, Mandalay and other cities in which numerous demonstrators have been injured, some of them seriously, by the security forces, the UN resident coordinator in Myanmar said that use of disproportionate force against the demonstrators is unacceptable. It called upon security forces to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms, including the right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. The protest against military government continued as people gathered in several towns in the country, despite curfew and curbs on public gatherings issued by the government for 10 regions in the country.
The United States has also condemned the violence against protesters in the ongoing protests against the military coup in Myanmar. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price has said that everyone has a right to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. The United States also repeated its calls for the military to relinquish power, restore the democratically elected government, release those detained and lift all telecommunication restrictions, also to refrain from violence.
In Washington, D.C., a group of protesters gathered outside Myanmar embassy on Tuesday to protest the military coup. They approached the embassy and presented an embassy employee with a letter calling on the staff of the embassy to resign and join the civil disobedience movement against Myanmar's military coup. The United States has condemned violence against demonstrators opposed to the military coup in Myanmar, saying everyone had the right to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. The administration of President Joe Biden has been working to restrict some aid to Myanmar and has threatened to impose sanctions.
Meanwhile, in the United States, the Senate voted to move forward with former President Donald Trump's impeachment trial, with a majority of senators determining they have jurisdiction to place the former presidents on trial in cases of impeachment. By a vote of 56 to 44, the Senate rejected arguments by Mr. Trump's attorneys, who asserted that holding an impeachment trial of a former president is unconstitutional. 6 Republicans joined all 50 Democratic senators in voting to move forward with the trial, but the vote also served as an indication of Trump's eventual acquittal.
On this vote, the ayes are 56, the nays are 44, and pursuant to S. 47, the Senate having voted in the affirmative on the foregoing question, the Senate shall proceed with the trial as provided under the provisions of that resolution.
The trial will resume today when the Democratic managers will have 8 hours to present the case for convicting Trump. Both sides will have 2 days to make their arguments before the Senate considers possible witnesses before a final vote. Senators will convene every day until a verdict is reached.
I ask unanimous consent that the trial adjourn until 12 noon, Wednesday, February 10th, and that this order also constitute the adjournment of the Senate.
The World Trade Organization on Tuesday said its top decision-making body, the General Council, will meet on 15th of February to decide on the next Director General. Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is widely expected to be selected to fill the months-long leadership void at the global trade watchdog after Washington reversed its opposition last week. 164-member body has been without a leader since Brazil's Roberto Azevedo left in year early on 31st of August.
And time now for all the COVID updates from across the world. So far, over 10 crore 73 lakh 76,000 people have contracted the virus, while the number of recoveries has crossed 7 crore 92 lakh 67,500 worldwide. The COVID virus has claimed more than 23 lakh 48,000 lives globally, and it continues to ravage the United States the most, where 2 crore 77 lakh 90,000 cases have registered since reports last came in. The number of fatalities due to COVID in the US stands above 4 lakh 79,000, followed by Brazil, which has lost around 2 lakh 33,590 lives.
Up next, we get to our segment Web Review, wherein a colleague joins us every day with the top stories or the headlines that have been put forth in different web portals across social media. And to get us the web review today, Amrit is joining us. Good morning, Amrit. Let us know what headlines have you picked up for us from social media.
Good morning, Preeti and Rukma. Apart from what you've already put out in your show, newspapers and web portals have carried varied national and international news. What I've chosen is to lead with the Times of India. It says no COVID-19 death in Delhi after 9 months. Well, for the first time in over 9 months, Delhi did not record a single death due to COVID on Tuesday. The last time the city had done that was recorded a 0 deaths due to COVID-19 in 24 hours was on the 11th of May. So in that sense, it's a good news. But of course, you Delhiites can't throw all caution to the winds because vaccination drive though has begun, but till the time it reaches the last person, it will be some time. So mass social distancing is the only defense that we have against COVID-19. We cannot let our guard down. Yesterday, the Health Minister of Delhi, Satinder Jain, said that the reduction in death due to COVID was a victory of the collective will of the people of Delhi. So good job, Delhi, but still we can't let our guard down. The other news comes from Bihar. The Hindu leads with it. It says Bihar cabinet expansion, Shahnawaz Hussain among those sworn in. The paper says, after much delay and speculation, the Nitish Kumar government in Bihar on Tuesday was expanded with 9 from the BJP and 8 from the JDU taking oath as ministers. Most of the new ministers are young faces. Prominent among them, as I said, is the BJP leader and former Union Minister Shahnawaz Hussain. Hussain is likely to be tipped as the finance minister of the state. The other young BJP leaders who took oath were Nitin Naveen from Patna constituency, Samrat Chaudhary, a former minister, Neeraj Kumar Bablu, a 5-time MLA from Chhatarpur, who's also a relative of deceased Bollywood actor Sushant Singh Rajput, and MLA from Saharsa, Alok Ranjan Jha, and Subhash Singh from Gopalganj. News from the world of business. EU report says that a report by the International Energy Agency says India to pip EU as the world's 3rd largest power consumer by 2040. This is what the Times of India has printed. It says India will dislodge the European Union as the world's 3rd largest energy consumer by 2030 as urbanization and an urbanized population expands and the rapid economic growth pulls more people out of poverty. The report also says by 2040, that's 10 years after that, India's electricity system will be larger than the EU in terms not just of consumption but also generation capacity, and the country will have more renewable energy than the US. Remember, India has set ambitious renewable energy targets for itself. It's committed to clean and green energy. So keeping in line with that, the countries will contribute 25% of the global growth in energy demand to 2040, posting the largest increase for any country, underpinned by a rate of GDP growth that adds the equivalent of another Japan. That's what the report says. The other the other big news, this news, the Times of India has printed, it happened last evening. UAE spacecraft enters orbit around Mars in a historic flight. Last late evening, the spacecraft from the UAE swung into orbit around Mars on Tuesday, which was a triumph for the Arab world's first interplanetary mission. Ground controllers at UAE Space Center in Dubai were of course excited. They rose to their feet and broke into applause when the word came in that Amal, which is the Arabic word for hope, had reached its at the end of its 7-month, 300 million mile journey and had begun circling the red planet. It will gather data about Mars' atmosphere. It is also being closely followed by China's mission, and also the NASA's mission, which will reach their orbiter, is expected to reach Mars on the 18th of this month. Now, this is a very difficult mission. The chances of entering the orbit are just about close to 50%. So UAE did make it. So in that sense, it was a great achievement for UAE, the Arab world, and of course the whole world. This data will help us understand whether life ever existed on Mars or not. So that's what's made it to the newspapers and web portals this morning. It's back to you, Preeti and Rukma.
Well, thank you very much, Amrit, for joining us there and for filling us in on all that's trending on social media and on web portals across the world. Moving on now to our next segment, Biz Buzz.
Fitch Ratings on Tuesday said that budget proposals will help Indian insurers attract foreign capital, strengthen solvency and promote competition. The proposals could encourage global insurers to enter the fast-expanding Indian market, while international insurers already holding minority stakes in domestic companies may try to increase their ownership over the medium term.
And from all the business stories, time now for all the news in the world of sports in Sports Track.
Beginning Sports Track with cricket first, England has won the Chennai Test by 227 runs, chasing 420 runs to win. India were all out on 192 in the second innings. India resumed at 39 for 1 on day 5. Cheteshwar Pujara was the first wicket to fall lead sent him back at 15 and Shubman Gill fell soon after scoring another 50. Anderson removed Rahane in the same over without even opening his account. Rishabh Pant also fell to Anderson after scoring 11. Skipper Virat Kohli and R. Ashwin added 54 runs for the 7th wicket. Leach broke the partnership by removing Ashwin. Virat Kohli was bowled at 72 by Stokes. Indian innings soon folded at 192 in 58.1 overs. Jack Leach picked 4 wickets while James Anderson took 3. Joe Root has now drawn level with Michael Vaughan as England's most successful Test captain. England has sealed their 6th consecutive win in Asia.
Munita Prajapati, a 19-year-old from Varanasi, broke the under-20 10,000 meter race walk national record on the penultimate day of the 36th National Junior Athletics Championships in Guwahati on Tuesday. Her time of 47:53:58 made her the first Indian under-20 woman to go under 48 minutes in the event.
Prince Pal Singh will realize his American dream as he kickstarts his professional basketball career today, 6 years after he first touched a basketball. Prince Pal, son of an electrician in Gurdaspur in Punjab, will become the 3rd Indian hoopster to play in the G League of National Basketball Association. The 20-year-old will play for Ignite, a one-of-a-kind development team consisting mostly of NBA draft prospects from around the world. He is also the first NBA Academy India graduate to sign a professional contract with the NBA G League.
And time now to take a look at all the events that made this day special in history.
On 10 February 1921, Kashi Vidyapeeth was inaugurated in Varanasi by Mahatma Gandhi during the non-cooperation movement of the freedom struggle on the auspicious occasion of Basant Panchami. On this day in 1952, the part results of the first general elections of India were announced. The day is also celebrated as India's first democratic leap, as these were the first general elections of India. On the same day in 1996, IBM's computer Deep Blue beat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov in the first game of their match. Deep Blue is the first computer to win both a chess game and a chess match against reigning world champion under regular time controls. On this very day, World Pulses Day is also being celebrated. In 2019, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 10th February as the World Pulses Day. This year's theme for the World Pulses Day is Love Pulses for a Healthy Diet and Planet.
All right, after that, the history of the day segment, we will get you weather across the country. According to the satellite picture, a western disturbance lies as a cyclonic circulation over North Pakistan and neighborhood with a trough aloft and mid and upper tropospheric westerlies roughly along the latitude and longitude, that is 32 degrees north. Because of this, isolated rainfall and snowfall will likely be over northern parts of Uttarakhand today, and dense to very dense fog at isolated places is likely over Uttarakhand, Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh and Delhi and West Uttar Pradesh in the morning hours tomorrow, and there will be a reduction in spatial distribution and intensity thereafter.
Also, rain or thunder showers observed since yesterday over recording above today cold wave conditions observed at isolated places over Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Odisha. Dense to very dense fog observed over Punjab and Haryana. Moderate fog in Uttar Pradesh, Saurashtra and Kutch and Tripura. Visibility also was very low, 500 meters or less, and Amritsar and Ambala minus 25 meters each. Also, maximum temperatures were markedly above normal at many places over Himachal Pradesh, at isolated places over West Rajasthan, appreciably above normal at many places over Uttarakhand, East Rajasthan, Assam and Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Konkan and Goa and coastal Karnataka, at a few places over Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan and Muzaffarabad, and sub-Himalayan West Bengal. Time now to take a look at temperatures recorded across the country.
brings us to the end of this edition of Breakfast Show this morning. Again, we'll be back with a fresh edition tomorrow. But before we go, we leave you with a quick reminder. We're running this special show, News on the Hour, every day on DD India at 10 a.m. A show that is loaded with inputs coming in from reporters, which bring you and, in fact, apprise you with all the aspects related to the news which are hitting or which are making it to the headlines every morning. So stay tuned. We will get you that show at 10 in the morning today.
And as we go, as always, we'll be leaving you with interesting visuals to make your day all that better. Today, we're bringing you visuals of twin pandas at a Belgian zoo, discovering the joys of playing in the snow as freezing weather swept much of northern Europe. Take a look and enjoy. Namaskar.
Bye-bye.